For many people over 40, the word Velociraptor immediately brings to mind a terrifying image, a sleek reptilian predator with claws as sharp as knives and the cunning of a wolf pack. If you saw Jurassic Park when it hit theaters in the 1990s, you likely remember the raptors as cold-blooded killers, smart enough to open doors and scary enough to give adults nightmares. But what if everything you thought you knew about velociraptors was wrong? The truth is, the real velociraptor was no larger than a big chicken. That's not hyperbole, it's science. While it's tempting to cling to the Hollywood version, the facts paint a much more fascinating picture. Understanding Velociraptor today is a little like learning that Pluto isn't a planet anymore. It doesn't ruin the wonder, it deepens it. Let's rewind to where this story begins, not in a movie studio, but in the deserts of Mongolia nearly a century ago. In 1923, an American expedition led by Roy Chapman Andrews unearthed the first known Velociraptor fossils. At the time, the discovery was groundbreaking, but without the tools we have now. CT scans, evolutionary modeling, high-resolution 3D scanning, the picture was incomplete. What they found was a small, nimble creature with a long tail, sharp teeth, and a distinctive curved claw on each foot. It wasn't until decades later that we began to understand what made Velociraptor truly special. Fossil evidence from the late 90s and early 2000s revealed something that defied everything we thought we knew: quill knobs on the forearms. These are the same small bumps found on birds today, attachment points for feathers. This wasn't a scaly reptilian monster. It was a feathered bird-like hunter. That revelation sparked controversy. For people who grew up thinking of dinosaurs as giant cold-blooded lizards, the idea of a feathered raptor felt strange, almost silly. Much like how older generations struggled to accept the shift from rotary phones to smartphones, the idea of a fluffy dinosaur clashed with what they had always known. But science, like technology, marches forward, and Velociraptor stood at the crossroads between dinosaurs and birds. To be clear, Velociraptor couldn't fly. Its feathers were not wings, but likely helped with insulation balance or even display. Still, its skeleton shared many traits with the modern birds: a wishbone, hollow bones, three-fingered hands. The more we looked, the more Velociraptor resembled a bird, not just physically, but behaviorally. Fast, agile, possibly warm-blooded, it was a predator of its time, but not a giant. So why did Hollywood get it so wrong? The answer is both simple and clever. When Michael Crichton wrote Jurassic Park, he based the behavior of his velociraptors on a dinosaur called Deinonychus, which was about the size shown in the films. But Velociraptor sounded cooler, more exotic, and threatening. Spielberg and his team ran with it, creating the raptor we all remember, taller than a man, lethal in groups, and eerily intelligent. The result was unforgettable cinema, but it came at the cost of scientific accuracy. And yet the cultural power of that image cannot be overstated. It's like how Sherlock Holmes is always pictured wearing a deerstalker hat, even though Arthur Conan Doyle never described him that way. Fiction shapes perception, even when the facts disagree. What makes Velociraptor truly captivating today isn't how scary it was, it's how much it teaches us about evolution. For audiences over 40, this is where the story gets richer. Because this isn't just about dinosaurs, it's about how knowledge changes and how we respond to it. Much like how our understanding of the universe has evolved since the days of black and white televisions, our image of Velociraptor has transformed from monster to marvel. And yet the real Velociraptor wasn't weak. It was an efficient predator in its ecological niche. It hunted small prey, possibly lizards, mammals, or baby dinosaurs. Its infamous sickle claw was likely used not to slash, but to grip or pin prey, much like how eagles use their talons today. In fact, if you've ever seen a hawk dive toward a rabbit, you've witnessed a modern echo of Velociraptor's hunting style. That comparison isn't just poetic, it's evolutionary. Birds are quite literally living dinosaurs. Not just descendants, but a branch of the dinosaur family tree that never went extinct. Chickens, pigeons, crows, they all carry traces of creatures like Velociraptor in their DNA. It's a humbling thought the dinosaurs didn't vanish. They evolved, adapted, and took flight. This idea that the familiar can hold the extraordinary is deeply resonant for people over 40. At this stage in life, we've seen trends rise and fall. We've watched the impossible become commonplace. We remember life before the internet, before GPS, before smartphones. So when science tells us that dinosaurs are still among us, disguised as birds, it's not disappointing, it's thrilling. Let's also take a moment to talk about intelligence. The movie Raptors are portrayed as brilliant tacticians, opening doors, communicating complex strategies, even showing emotion. But real Velociraptors weren't masterminds. Their brain-to-body ratio was high for dinosaurs, suggesting above-average smarts, but nowhere near mammalian levels. Think more along the lines of modern birds like crows or ravens, clever in their way, but not solving puzzles in a lab. That said, Velociraptor likely had keen senses. It needed speed, awareness, and timing to survive. Picture it sprinting across sand dunes, tail stiff for balance, closing in on a panicked lizard. It was agile, fierce, and likely operated solo, or in loose groups, not coordinated packs. Still, in its time and place, it was a success story. The environment Velociraptor lived in was harsh, semi-arid deserts with unpredictable storms, shifting sand, and limited resources. One of the most famous fossils ever found, known as the fighting dinosaurs, shows a Velociraptor locked in deadly combat with a Protoceratops. They were likely buried mid-battle by a collapsing dune. That fossil is a time capsule proof of nature's raw, unfiltered drama. Now, let's step back. Why does this story matter to us today, especially to adults who grew up with a different picture of the past? Because it's not just about one dinosaur. It's about how we engage with change. Velociraptor represents the scientific process in motion. It's a reminder that truth is not fixed. Like music formats or political views, it evolves with time and evidence. And there's value in that evolution. Our ability to update our understanding to say, I was wrong and now I know better, is what defines us as thoughtful beings. It's what separates mythology from science, nostalgia from knowledge. Velociraptor is a case study in how wonder doesn't fade when truth enters the room. In fact, it gets deeper. For educators and parents over 40, this shift offers a teachable moment. When your child points to a dinosaur toy that looks more like a scaly dragon than a bird, you can say, actually, scientists now believe they looked more like birds with feathers. That's a conversation starter, not a correction. And it shows that learning is a lifelong journey. In recent years, museums and documentaries have started to catch up. New exhibitions feature feathered raptors with vibrant plumage, colorful reconstructions, and even robotic models. Some people are still resistant. Feathers don't feel scary, but that's a matter of expectation, not reality. Nature doesn't care if something looks frightening to us. It only cares if it works. And feathers work. They insulate. They allow for speed balance and communication. They're not a weakness. They're a superpower. Just ask an owl. Culturally, we've seen dinosaurs return in films, games, and books. Yet, most media still cling to outdated designs. Why? Because fear sells. Because filmmakers know that what frightened you as a kid will still spark adrenaline today. But as curious adults, we can go deeper. We can separate entertainment from education. Much like how we now know Viking helmets didn't have horns, or that gladiators weren't all muscle-bound heroes, we can accept that velociraptors were not man-sized monsters. They were small, efficient, feathered hunters that helped bridge the gap between ancient reptiles and modern birds. That truth, stranger than fiction, is worth sharing. Even in modern science classrooms, Velociraptor continues to evolve as a teaching tool. In discussions about evolution, adaptation, or even scientific humility, It becomes a symbol of how new discoveries can reshape old beliefs. It encourages critical thinking and a willingness to revise what we once took for granted. In some ways, Velociraptor also reflects us, not in scale or shape, but in adaptability. It thrived in a harsh environment, was physically equipped to handle uncertainty, and left a legacy far greater than its size. Like us, it was a product of its time, shaped by challenges and biology, but also part of something much larger, an ongoing story of life on Earth. The next time you see a bird flutter across your path, take a moment. That flutter, that movement, carries echoes of an ancient world. In every feather is a fragment of prehistoric history. In every peck or chirp, a whisper from a lineage that survived mass extinctions, shifting continents, and time itself. And, perhaps most importantly, the story of Velociraptor reminds us that curiosity, when nurtured, has no age limit. Whether you're 10 or 70, you can rediscover wonder through science. You can challenge what you thought you knew. You can ask better questions, because knowledge, like evolution, never stops. So the next time someone brings up velociraptors, don't correct them with smugness. Invite them into the story. Share the wonder. Talk about the real animal, not the one made in Hollywood, but the one made by evolution. And if they laugh when you say it was the size of a chicken, let them. Then tell them the chicken carries the legacy of one of nature's most fascinating creatures. And that, in its own way, is even more impressive than fiction. Because truth, especially when it surprises us, is where real discovery begins. But there's still more to uncover, because Velociraptor's story isn't just about dinosaurs or science. It's about how we as humans interact with the unknown. It's about how we respond when long-held beliefs are challenged by new discoveries. For many people in midlife, that question is personal. We've witnessed revolutions in technology, medicine, and even how we communicate. The world today would be unrecognizable to someone from the 1970s, and that's a good thing. In that sense, Velociraptor becomes a symbol of intellectual flexibility. Just as it adapted to its environment, we're challenged to adapt our thinking. That process doesn't end at school graduation. In fact, as we age, our ability to embrace change becomes more important than ever. Updating what we think we know, whether about health, climate, or dinosaurs, is part of living a thoughtful, informed life. Imagine visiting a museum with your grandchildren and seeing a new feathered dinosaur exhibit. You smile because you remember when dinosaurs were all green and scaly, but now you can tell them with excitement, this is what scientists believe today, and it's amazing how much we've learned. That small moment bridges generations. It turns nostalgia into inspiration. This is what makes Velociraptor so powerful. It's more than a fossil. It's a reminder that science is not about having the final answer. It's about asking better questions. It's about having the humility to say, what if I was wrong? And the courage to follow the evidence wherever it leads. And that mindset, open, curious, forward-looking, is what drives progress in every area of life. It's the same mindset that invented vaccines, sent people to the moon, built the internet, and helped preserve endangered species. Velociraptor may be extinct, but the spirit of exploration it represents is alive in each of us. So let's not reduce this incredible creature to a movie monster or a footnote in a textbook. Let's honor it by embracing what it teaches, that growth begins where certainty ends, and that even in our 40s, 50s, or beyond, we can still be surprised, still be inspired, still learn something new. Because the real thrill of discovery, whether it's in a laboratory, a fossil bed, or your own living room, is not in confirming what we know. It's in expanding what we understand.